This is a special day for Father Andrew White's school as we come together to celebrate 70 years of Catholic education. And in celebrating those 70 years, our hearts want to make sure that we thank all of the many, many people who have been a part of Father Andrew's school over these 70 years. Father David has already mentioned the wonderful sisters who were the establishing faculty, but we also have to thank all of the faculty members who are here and those who have served over the years educating our young people and giving them good example. We'd also have to thank all of the parents and the benefactors of Father Andrew White School to make sure that you know how important your support is. Your support, first of all, in sending your children and your grandchildren here, but also your financial support. And then, of course, I'd have to thank all of my brother priests who have served. Father David, he hasn't been here 70 years, but Father Joe and Father Ted and Deacon Joe, thank you for your ministry and your care of the people who populate this wonderful school. When St. Paul wrote to the Philippians in our first reading, he revealed something. He really liked the Philippians. He had many different communities that he cared for, the Galatians and Thessalonians and the Romans, but he had favorites. And the Philippians were among those favorites that St. Paul had, and he writes very tenderly to them. Now, I know that occasionally in families, being the favorite son or the favorite daughter can be a source of an argument. You know, Mom likes you best, or Dad, you are Dad's favorite, or Grandpa thinks the world of you. But it's also a sign that we recognize the love that our parents and grandparents have for us. And there's something in all of us that would like to be the favorite. And some days you may be the favorite, and then other days you may not be the favorite because of things that you have done or forgotten to do or done in a poor way. But St. Paul really loved the Philippians. And he wrote to them and told them how much just thinking about them filled him with joy. Now, sometimes listening to Scripture, we don't really understand all of the meanings that are captured in the words of Scripture. So, for example, in the Gospel today, when Jesus talks about being salt and light, probably Father Andrew White and his companions understood that in a much different way than we do. Because we live in a world where we have to watch how much salt we have. Because salt, when it's taken in excess, can be dangerous for our health. But when the writers of the Gospels wrote those stories about salt, and Father Andrew White, in his world, they understood salt as part of a preserving custom because they didn't have refrigeration like we do. We go to our refrigerators and we open it up and things that are there and they're safe and they're fresh. But in the world of the Gospels and in the world that Father Andrew White would have lived, the salt that they had was often used to make sure that they preserved meats and sometimes other things, because salt has a preserving capacity, a preserving quality. And if salt loses that ability, then it isn't worth very much. And then light, Jesus says that we are to be the light of the world. When we come into school or come into church or go home, you just flip a switch and then there's light. But in the world that Father Andrew White and certainly the gospel writers had, light was much more fragile. And you had to preserve light because if the candle blew out, you lost light. And so those two images of being salt and being light are important. And certainly in the world that Father Andrew White lived, that importance was much different than it is for us. If we go home and the light, you turn on the switch and the light doesn't come home, you say, "Mom, the fuse blew," or somehow we lost power. Jesus says that we are to be the light of the world. You and I, and all of the adults and parents and grandparents, we have to give light to the world. Light that brings hope and light that helps people see, not just physically, but in their own hearts. And we have to be the salt. That is, we have to help people preserve the faith that is ours and keep things fresh. Now, for 70 years, I keep calling him Saint Andrew White. Maybe he is, but he's not officially canonized yet. They had to carefully preserve the things that they had to eat, and they had to keep the lights alive so that in the darkness they could see. But for 70 years, this school has been a source of preserving the faith, of keeping the faith alive in this part of our archdiocese, in this part of our country, and being a source of light and encouragement for those whose lives are pretty well darkened by fear and hatred. And you've done that very, very, very well. So this is a happy day for you, a happy day for all of the teachers and the administrators, a happy day for your parents and grandparents and your priests, a happy day for all the parishes that are represented here. Because you young people really are the light of the world, and you are a source of preservation of the faith that the Lord has given us. And for 70 years, you and all of the students and teachers that preceded you have made this part of our archdiocese, this part of our nation, bright, safe, and well secured.